Hello. Today, I want to talk about learning. And to quote the psychologist and humanist Carl Rogers, not the lifeless, sterile, futile, easy-to-forget stuff crammed into the mind of the poor, hopeless individual tied to his desk by the ironclad bonds of conformity. Whew. Sounds ominous, huh? Maybe even sounds like an exaggeration. Tied to his desk by the ironclad bonds of conformity. It might sound like an exaggeration, but I have a very deep connection to this quote because at the young age of 7, in 2nd grade, I was literally tied to my desk by my teacher with my sweatshirt. I'm not sure what her reasons were. Perhaps I talked to my friends a little bit too much. Perhaps I got and walked around a little bit too much. Perhaps I was behaving too much like a normal 7-year-old boy. But whatever her reason was, she decided that she needed to teach me a lesson. She needed to teach me what would happen to little boys who did not obey authority. She needed to teach me a lesson, what would happen to little boys who did not follow the rules. From that moment, the school desk never looked the same to me. It never felt the same. It was a place of trepidation, of fear. It just felt unnatural. Now, most people aren't tied to their desks by their teachers, or at least I hope not. But I would be willing to bet that this story points to a larger fact, that we have a very serious problem. And this problem has become so rampant and so out of control that it's almost become a cliche. And this might be a crude way to say it, this might be a rude way to say it, but I'm just going to say it. Our problem is that school sucks. Seriously, even the people who are really good at it tend not to like it. And we've got a dropout epidemic to prove it. Students are dropping like flies, and this has been known for a very long time. But what isn't very well known is that we also have a dropout epidemic with teachers. Teachers are leaving the profession in droves. Education schools have enrollments that are dwindling. Now, I may not have fallen victim to that first statistic. I made it through high school. I made it through the university system. I even made it into the classroom as a teacher for not just 1, but 7 years, 8 including student teaching. But I did fall victim to that second statistic. I am a high school teacher dropout. And I want to talk about the reasons for that today because I feel the reasons that we are seeing teachers dropping out are the same reasons that we see students dropping out. And that reason is simple. We have an ideological problem. The way we think about school is broken. But before we get into that problem, I want to talk about what the problem is not. And I firmly believe that the problem is not people. That teacher who tied me to my desk absolutely had no business in the classroom, no doubt. There are certainly bad apples out there, but it has been my experience as both a professional and a student that teachers care, teachers work hard, teachers want to do best for their students, and they're doing the good work. And so for me, it's not teachers at all. Likewise, it's not kids these days. Kids these days get a horrible rap, especially the millennials with their selfies and their technology. It's the world is coming to an end. But that hasn't been my experience at all. My experience is that kids these days are amazing. Kids these days are brilliant. Thank you. Kids these days are dynamic. Kids these days are not failing the system so much as the system is failing them. So for me, it's not people. Likewise, it's not ignorance. We understand the human mind in ways that we haven't ever before. We understand what makes for good learning. I'm going to refer back to Ken Robinson for some wisdom on this topic. Ken Robinson, a creativity expert, TED laureate, educational advocate, and in his TED Talk, How to Avoid Education's Death Valley, he describes 3 things that, if respected, will lead to human flourishing and authentic learning. The first is that we are all different and diverse. Not a single one of us are the same. Each and every one of us has a different and unique collection of strengths and weaknesses. There is no such thing as an average. The second, he said, is we are all curious. I think the best way to understand this is to look at a toddler. Next time you see a toddler, watch him or her for just 2 minutes. You will see one of the best learners on the face of this planet. And curiosity is the engine of that learning. Likewise, children, teens, adults, if given an environment that allows their curiosity to flourish, learning will also flourish. And the third thing, he said, is that we are all creative. I think this is best articulated by Pablo Picasso, who said famously, "We are all born artists." And he spent his entire storied career trying to figure out how to get back to that creativity from his childhood. Now, I love Sir Ken Robinson, and I think he's a brilliant man, but I think he missed one important idea here. I think there are more than 3 traits. I think we need to also recognize that we are social and collaborative as well by our nature. From the dawn of humanity, we have been a tribal people. From the dawn of humanity, we have worked together and we have collaborated and we have maximized each other's strengths and minimized each other's weaknesses. And we get this. We understand this. We know that people are naturally this way and that if we meet these needs, that kids will learn well. And yet, the system ignores this humanity. So, what's standing in the way? I want to get back to my original idea. We have a broken ideology. The way we think about education and learning is broken. And I believe that this ideology is broken because of the history of how our schools came about and the legacy that has borne out from that legacy. Schools were never originally designed to meet the needs of real students. Schools were not designed to create authentic learners en route to becoming self-actualized human beings, seeking out their passion and following their bliss. That never came into the equation. No, schools were designed to meet the needs of the Industrial Revolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, learning was a very different thing. People did it in a hands-on fashion, usually apprenticing a master, trying and failing and figuring out and tweaking and in a natural way, learning what they needed for the day. But after the Industrial Revolution, after the advent of the factory, after the advent of the assembly line, we suddenly needed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of factory workers. And as it turned out, most people were really bad at that work. People used to working outside in dynamic environments hated coming to work in a dark, dingy factory, standing on an assembly line and doing the same monotonous task day in, day out, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, obeying the authority of the big boss man on top. And so, the powers that be at this time created a system that would set people up with the skills and the knowledge necessary to succeed within this environment. The system is not broken. It works very well at what it was designed to do. It's obsolete. And it's founded on an outmoded ideology left over from over 100 years ago. So we have been left with a system designed to create compliant and orderly workers, because that's exactly what you needed to be in order to succeed in this industrial economy. The better you followed the rules, the better you obeyed authority, the better you stuck into the status quo, the better you were likely to succeed. We have a system now that tells us that passion is a distraction, that dreams are impractical, because when you're standing on an assembly line, they very well are. We're stuck with the system that tells us that competition is king, because not everybody can become the big boss man. Only about 20% of people could make it into the ranks of manager. The rest of the 80% of us were left on the assembly line floor. And so we needed a way to be able to sort the wheat from the chaff and to figure out who's going to be that top 20%, who's going to make the most money. And we ended up with a system that says compliance equals success. The better you follow the rules, the better you obey authority, the better you stick to the status quo, the greater success you will have. And I think this is evidenced all over the place in our system today. From the incredibly high premium we put on GPAs, to class rankings, to college admission expectations that are just ridiculous these days, to President Bush's No Child Left Behind, to President Obama's Race to the Top, to the standardized testing mandated by both of these, to the new debate regarding school vouchers, which purports that if we allow public education to compete up against private education, to compete up against charter schools, and if we help them compete, if we make them compete, and if we see who the winners and the losers are, then we will be able to better everybody. And as we determine the winners and the losers, well, the corporations will take over the losers. And the corporations will continue this competitious cycle into infinity. And how are we going to figure out who are the winners and losers? Standardized testing, standardized testing, standardized testing, standardized testing. Rather than a race to the top, we're going to have a race to the bottom, to the lowest common denominator, making everybody average, making everybody standard, like a little cog that can be put in and taken out of a machine at will. There's, of course, been reforms, and they have helped. Things aren't exactly the way they were 100 years ago. Some schools are doing amazing work, and some schools are doing really, really well. However, I'd be willing to argue that these reforms, these exceptional schools are just that, exceptional. They are exceptions to the rule, and the rule is still broken. And the rule needs to change because times have changed. We've gone through an information revolution, we've gone through a connection revolution, and the economic landscape is completely different than it was during the Industrial Revolution. The same skills are not going to lead you to success. In fact, the NEA, the National Education Association, the largest teachers' union in this country, admits that there are 4 skills that are most important in this new 21st century global marketplace. They call it the 4 C's. And the NEA also admits that we are doing a woefully bad job at teaching kids these 4 C's. These 4 C's are, of course, critical thinking and problem solving, creativity and innovation, communication, and then the 4th here, I believe, is key. The 4th here is, of course, collaboration. This is the one that ties them all together. This is the one that I believe could be the key to a new ideology that could usher in a new era of education that brings us to a place of authentic learning. But what have we been left with? An industrial model based around competition. And instead of critical thinking, we get memorization. Instead of creativity, we get conformity. Instead of authentic communication, we get regurgitation. Give you a cutesy little rhyme for it. We have skill drill, passion kill, bubble fill. And yet, it is no longer enough to simply comply. We cannot follow the rules to success anymore. We can't compete our way out of this in the same way we have in the past, through the standardized competition based on compliance. We need a new ideology. We need a human ideology. We need an ideology that recognizes who we are and how we learn. We need an ideology that doesn't punish 7-year-old boys for acting appropriate for their age by having them tied down to their desk. We need an ideology not based in competition and the standardization that it creates, but instead a system based on collaboration. And by this I mean, we need a system that addresses the individual as a partner, that works with the student, that understands the student empathically, so that we can work with them together. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to throw competition out. There's absolutely room for competition, and competition can absolutely be a healthy thing, but it cannot be the rule. Competition can absolutely flourish within a larger collaborative environment, but it doesn't work the other way around. Competition crushes collaboration, crushes creativity, crushes critical thinking. I want to finish today with a story of one of my favorite students, Marcus Parkansky. Marcus graduated just a couple months ago, and since then decided not to go into college, decided not to enter the ranks of a worker, and instead decided to start a business. Growing up, through high school, he worked as a barista and developed a deep passion for coffee and espresso art. Likewise, he also had a deep passion for taco trucks. And he got together with 2 of his best friends, his brother Mitchell Parkansky and his good friend Alex Baim, and together they created a coffee truck. They packed up, they hit the road, they left Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and went up to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where there was a thriving food truck market. And despite the fact there was a thriving food truck market, nobody had been able to do what these young men did. Nobody was able to fill up this niche, and they did, and they have been a rampant success. I'm not just talking financially, I'm not just talking about the fact that they've been written up by newspapers and critics and all that kind of stuff, which they have, but they have been a great success, according to Marcus, because they have created a tribe. They have created a brand that people believe in. They have created a group of people that they call their misfits. So, Marcus has absolutely, in my mind, mastered creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. He's mastered communication in the 21st century, utilizing social networking to connect with all of his little misfits out there so they know where he is every day. He's absolutely mastered collaboration, not just with his two immediate business partners, but with all sorts of people in all sorts of different directions. You might be thinking, this is a horrible example to make your point. This kid just months out of school is a rampant success. That has to be a testament to his schooling, right? I would say no. I would say that Marcus has succeeded despite his schooling. And I say that because that's exactly what Marcus says. And when asked about his success, he points back to his time at Ballantine Coffee Roasters, who gave him a truly collaborative environment in which to learn. They understood him as a person. They understood that he needed to be able to practice and to experiment and to fail and to try again and to get his fingers in every tiny little piece of the business. And they gave him the collaborative environment that the schools were not able to. And this is what I believe we need to do in education. Rather than setting standardized bars of achievement, rather than telling everybody that they have to behave exactly in the same way, we need to do what Ballantine Coffee did for Marcus. We need to give our kids an environment in which they can explore, in which they can chase their passions, in which they can engage with their teachers in a collaborative way to construct their own understanding rather than fitting into a mold so they can compete up against everybody else, so they can be put into a data spreadsheet. So my final note is that we need to act more like Ballantine Coffee. We need to act more like the misfits, and we need to collaborate. Thank you.